Good afternoon. This is David Friedman. I'm with TCA Venture Group, and I'm one of your co-hosts today. And with me is Dave Berkus, Angel Supreme. How's that one for a neat title?
Oh, nice.
And my co-host.
Hello, David.
Well, as you can see in my background, I have a golf course. And the reason
Yes.
is we have a very special guest. Brian
Okay.
McMahon is going to join us. And he was telling me that he lost all of his golf balls at Ballybunion in Ireland. So I felt I wanted to make him feel at home. How are you doing these days?
I'm doing just great. And these podcasts are beginning to kind of roll, which is kind of nice. I'd like to say that I'm taking 1-minute segments out of these podcasts. I'm putting them into LinkedIn and YouTube and getting about 1,000 views a week just on the 1-minute segments.
Yeah, I've been seeing a lot of good progress as well. I got my hair cut. You like it? It's really neat today.
Very nice.
Thank you. Yeah, it's trying to make me a bit more youthful. So I was sharing the podcast with my my stylist, as we call her, and she got real excited and started texting out the link to all of her friends and all of her clients that are in the investing world, both the clients that are entrepreneurs and clients that are investors. So I told her, just make sure when you send it out, subscribe and like.
Absolutely right. So we have to give you a little applause.
Thank you very much. And there you go with your toys again. All right, but now, without further ado, I'm going to bring on Brian.
Gentlemen.
Speaking of the devil, do you see my background, Brian?
I appreciate you. Thank you, my friend.
How many balls did you lose in Ballybunion?
It's not just Ballybunion. It's over an entire lifetime. I found out a long time ago that maybe I should stick to investing.
Yeah, well, you're head honcho of Expert Dojo. I would assume you're not going to be considered I'm not sure how much of a scratch golfer you are. You're probably a poor golfer. Still better than I am, I can tell you that.
Look, I hail from Ireland, which means that, like every other Irish boy, I played with my mum for many years, and then life got in the way of me and 4 or 5 hours a day on a golf course. But it is still a beautiful thing to watch.
Glad to see.
Well, I envy you. I'm a terrible golfer. So I use the background because I have aspirational hope that one day I will complete 18 holes without losing all my golf balls.
Without hurting anybody.
So anyway, today we're going to talk about you, Expert Dojo, the role of accelerators, incubators in the overall startup ecosystem. We're going to pummel you with questions, and I'm sure, knowing you for so many years, that you'll be able to, thrust and parry these questions in a way that makes it entertaining and very informative. But first, I'd like to find out and give the audience an idea how you started. How did you get into being head honcho Expert Dojo?
By accident. I think, like most of the fun things in life are by accident, right? When you plan things too carefully, you find that they never end up where they're supposed to. I recognized at the beginning that there were some fundamental problems in how innovation was evolving in the United States, and I also recognized that there's some amazing people who are able to take care of those problems. So I just wanted to be a part of it. And I remember, I was reminded yesterday, going back 10, 12 years, where I would arrange events and bring some wonderful investors, incredible people such as yourself, in to meet amazing entrepreneurs who were just lost, they just didn't know what to do. And so I wouldn't say I ever woke up and said, I really want to be an investor, or I want to have an accelerator, or I want to be a venture capitalist. But what I really did wake up and say is that I want to be in part of this incredible world of innovation where we just have the privilege of being surrounded by people who are coming up with incredible new tomorrows every single day.
So Brian, we better start from the very beginning. So give us your quick definition of the difference between an accelerator, an incubator, and all the different kind of variations. That'll help.
Right. You know that you're going to ask 50 people this and they're all going to give you different definitions, right?
That's why I asked.
For me, an accelerator is when you come in a very supportive stage to a startup at the beginning. You know, folks like Y Combinator, folks like 500 Startups, folks like Techstars, The Alchemist. You put together a program over 8 to 12 weeks, which have varying levels of actual help to those particular startups. Provide them with a little bit of mentor help, and then you take an unproportionately large share of their company for the minimal amount of work that's put into it. And that's an accelerator. An incubator, I think, is when you have the cojones to actually do it yourself, and you put a disproportionate amount of your own money into building out your own startups that you hope will turn into large companies because you have the ability to do it yourself rather than just talk about it. And yeah, and I think they're the main two. You also have pre-accelerators, which I really like. Stubbs Alderton are a great example of a wonderful pre-accelerator, where you have somebody in the service industry that want to provide help and support for founders who are even before that stage where they'll get into accelerators. Because with accelerators, really, even all of us, we've moved further and further down the chain, where those very, very early stage companies who don't have a product yet, most of them are not going to get in.
And that kind of brings a lot of things to mind. First of all, you mentioned Stubbs Alderton, which is nice because Joe Stubbs is an old friend. And he was the one who helped us to establish many of the companies. Gave of his time a lot. So there's a nod to the founder of Stubbs Alderton. But come back again and tell us what an entrepreneur should expect out of an incubator. Do they have to physically relocate? Do they spend 8 hours a day for some period of time? Give us a little bit about that.
So I'm a bad person to ask because I run an accelerator in the full belief that accelerators don't work, period. Right? That's my absolute firm stance after 5 years of doing this, that they used to. By the way, I have such tremendous respect for people like Dave Brown and Dave Cohn and the folks in Techstars and 500 Startups and Dave McClure, who I know, and like Aman and all those guys. I think what they built 15, 20 years ago was a thing of magic, because you had a very, very small group of people who knew how venture worked and a very large group of people who were disenfranchised because they couldn't get in. And these incredible accelerators came out and produced a model that provided mentorship, which was desperately needed, and access to investors, which nobody has. But that was back in the time of Jurassic Park, and the model hasn't changed in 20 years. So everybody still does the same thing. Everybody still gives 100K or whatever, or 50K, 100K, 50, whatever it is. Everybody takes a disproportionate amount of equity from the startups at the beginning. And I believe now that like mentorship is not only is it a waste of time in its generality, but actually it's a false positive or negative, because what happens is it's incredibly unfair, because people who only know a startup for half an hour are expected to give this incredible sage advice that's going to give direction to the startup in the future, which is too hard to do in isolation. And so I believe, and I'm not here to say we have the solution to the model, not at all. I'm here to say like we're searching for the solution to the model. I believe that the model is old, the model is antiquated, the model is old-fashioned, and the model absolutely needs to change. And access to mentors and some investors, which is 100% a commodity in an accelerator, is not enough to justify the amount of money that's charged.
Tell us.
So let me ask you a couple. I'm sorry. Let me ask you a couple of questions on that. If two things, and they're kind of related, maybe flip sides of the same coin. Do you select the company, or does the company select you, and how do you select them to be part of Expert Dojo?
Oh, we sell the company.
You sell them?
We sell them hard. Yeah, because look, this is a relationship. It's a relationship, and like I'm a 4'9" guy trying to, match up with someone who's 2 or 3 leagues ahead of me. And so it's, yeah, we sell. And so what happened was this. Look, this has been a journey for me, and it continues a journey for me. At the beginning, I love the idea of just being involved in helping an early stage startup. And I would say in the early days, 2018, 2019, we were pretty mediocre to terrible investors, because we believed, hey, if you buy cheap and you get lots of companies, you can aggregate the results. And that was a false promise. And then we became better, right? We had the privilege of being surrounded by these startups. We watched the ones who were fighting through. We got to pattern match an awful lot better. And it's like, oh, okay, cool. If this and this and this happens, and then this person breaks through, like you can see incredible things happening. And it was funny. I had a podcast this morning with Rushab from Matchbook AI, who I know there's many investors over in Tech Coast Angels. And he's doing incredible. And he just got a term sheet yesterday for $7+ million. And we're probably going to close out his Series A in the next 3 months or so. But like, he's such an incredibly resilient, brilliant person with a great product that was focused entirely on growth. And it took me a little while to realize, let's not be fancy, Brian. Let's just focus on products that customers really like. And let's use the customer as our diligence. That's it, period. And I'd say from that moment, we became better at investing. And then we're like, okay, great. Like we've now ticked the box of us being able to invest in good companies. What's the next problem? Well, the next problem is actually we have to provide a better service to companies. Like we have to do better than we've been doing before. Like a 12-week program, if I say it's not good enough for other people, it's not good enough for us too. So like the very short story to what was probably 1.5 to 2 years of pain is that we canceled all cohorts. We don't do cohorts anymore. And I would say we would probably never do a cohort again in the future. I consider it.
So what do you do now instead of a cohort? And do you use your own mentors, or do you bring in other people from the ecosystem, or you don't even have mentors per se?
So I would say in between having a cohort and doing what we do now, we just cried a lot because, it's that realization that you're not making the difference you want to. And if I actually go back to that moment, it was quite a pivotal moment because we're very, I would say, kind to our founders, and we try very hard with our founders. And because of that, if you ask most of our founders of Expert Dojo, what do you think of Expert Dojo? Most of them would say it's really good, it's good value, blah, blah, blah. But right. I brought in one of our top growth hackers, a guy called Chad. And Chad had like brought one company public himself and had built out another unicorn along with a couple of co-founders. And I said, Chad, I want you to analyze the companies and audit the companies and tell me where the truth really is. And he said, great, I'm going to call every single one. And I said, well, before you call them, I can already tell you they like us. He said, I'm not going to ask if they like you. I'm going to ask how much outreach they did last week versus last year. I'm going to ask what's their conversion ratio last week versus last year. I'm going to ask their revenue and sales tied into that. And I'm going to see if you made an impact. And then he came back afterwards and he's like, you're not making an impact. And so we burnt everything. Like we burnt the fields, we burnt the houses, we burnt we burnt everything. And then we went to our founders and we started to see like, what are the main things that actually help a company being able to break through? And look, we know this is just math, right? We know if a company can grow at 100, 200%, starting from 20K a month, it gets a unicorn by default, right? But it's like it gets a unicorn. It goes 20K to 60K, 60 to 180, 180 maybe to 360, and 360 even like 720, and suddenly you're at $1 million a month and you're on your way to being able to get it. It's just math. Like that's all it is. And the only thing that contributes to the math is revenue. And the only things that affect the revenue is the outbound, the optimization, the systems that you have in place, and how much your customers love your product, i.e. how many of them actually stay and renew. Like just those 4 things. Investment actually is not a consideration. Team is not a consideration. They're just symptoms of what is not working within one of those 4 areas. So we said, okay, if they're the 4 areas that affect it, well, why don't we shouldn't we, rather than do everything the same for every founder, which is again just another massive disrespect to those founders, should we be auditing those founders and looking at the areas of stress and then focusing growth hackers on those particular areas? And then we're like, okay, cool. Now that we know that we should do that, because every marketing person in the world is saying, yes, that's the right way to do it. Then we thought, oh, well, we don't have growth hackers for every single person every month. So we thought, how can we automate what we do? So we built out what we believe is like an incredible library of growth hacking, all focused on different areas. Like build out your enterprise sales, 4 weeks. Build out your LinkedIn. How do you create the best LinkedIn automation you possibly can? Well, we brought in the founder of Cleverly to do that, who's like one of the top automation people for LinkedIn on the planet? How do you like get to email 2,000 people on email every single day? Well, we brought in the top people from Apollo to teach that, and our founders that are already doing. And then we just started building out libraries of content, and then bringing our growth hackers in, not to repeat the same thing every minute, but to actually come in and say, okay, what questions have you got? And by the way, you don't get to ask questions if you haven't gone through the full training, implemented it, and tested it in your own market. And if you haven't done that for yourself, you don't get to ask us questions. So now there's no cohorts, there's no anything. There's just every single company who comes in goes through a full audit. They go through an audit with an outbound specialist, with an inbound specialist, with a system specialist, and a lovable product specialist. They then get given their stress points. We then pick out the areas that need to be worked on, and then we send them out like trainings which are prescripted for the following 4 months, which are then aligned with growth hackers that will work with them on those particular areas of growth.
That is refreshing. So what should a founder expect as far as amount of time during that period?
First of all, it's not like a lot of this stuff is not hard. We just don't know. Like LinkedIn is such a beautiful tool, but we don't know how to use it properly. But we can access anybody in the world through LinkedIn, but we just don't have the skills to do it. So to have somebody to come in and say, okay, you've got LinkedIn outreach. These are the files that you can go through. This is how you find the right people. This is how you use the right tags to try and do it. This is what you go after. Okay, we've got Navigator. This is how you can use Navigator to outreach. Okay, we've got Alfred or Cleverly, whichever you do, which means you can build sequences in which are prescriptive, email outreaches and everything in place that just makes it so much easier to be able to do it. And so it's all there. It's just as founders, we kind of expect ourselves and other people expect us to learn on each individual one of those. Well, there are really brilliant people out there who know how to do it. So founders get kind of two things from us when they come through. First of all, we're not nice anymore. I'm not nice anymore. I realize that by being nice to people, I'm not being nice to people. I'm actually being mean to people. Now I'm straight to the point. Look, here's the math. Here's your revenue. Here's your conversion ratio. Here's your outreach. Most people don't outreach. Let me make it even clearer. Most tech founders, in my mind, are weak human beings when it comes to actual sales accomplishments.
Yes.
Most are amazing at building sales decks, investor decks, all of that rubbish, which shouldn't even be part of the equation. Like the sales are not supposed to be on investors. The sales are supposed to be on customers. So yeah, I've turned into a real cranky old man that's just focused on execution. Execution, that's it.
You became a New Yorker, I guess.
I love New York, man.
I'm just teasing. I mean, your accent's a little different than mine. I have a question. Now, I love the idea of the customization. I love the idea of the audit. I think that's brilliant, actually, because now you can adapt it to each individual entity without spillage or minimizing spillage. How do the founders work with each other? Do they work with each other? You don't keep them separated, right? Or do you?
We do, and I think we can improve. I think we can improve on that. I've now become really fixated on this model. I'm copying everything from the internet marketing giants of the 70s. Like I'm not even inventing anything. I've never gone to a Tony Robbins conference, but I watch Tony Robbins market his conferences like it's a Netflix series. It's one of the most incredible psychological behavioral manipulations you've ever seen in your entire life. Like if you're there for 20 minutes, so I think there's a number of things that we can get much better at. We separate everybody right now. We just say to people individually, look, you're on your own, but we're going to find ways to be able to get combined skills from other people in the community that can help you. But for right now, like I have one founder. Look, Ivan over at Navigate Ventures, he's a great friend of mine, called me the other day, and he's like, I just invested in one of your companies. I love this company. Company's called North. And he said, look, okay, the company North, he's like, why do I like this company? And he's like, I like him because the guy's an executor, but he doesn't have anywhere near the revenue that some of our other founders have, right? Yeah. But when I called the guy from North, when I called Matt and I'm like, hey, Matt, what have you done today? And he's like, it's 10 o'clock. I've done 75 cold calls.
Yeah, by the way, just as an FYI, before I turn it over to Dave, Matt presented to TCA. I like where he's going. It reminds me of my early days in communications with combination of least cost routings and adds, moves, and changes. It's real, but for the cloud, I think he's on to something. Just an FYI for you. But I'll turn it over to Dave.
But he's a fighter. Just on that point, it like warms my heart when I get someone who says, I'm starting a company. I have a responsibility, not just to my investors. I got it to my wife and my husband, my boyfriend, my girlfriend, my mom, my dad, my kids, whoever it is. I have a responsibility to win this war against time. That's the only war that exists, not competitors, not anything else. It's just time. And that responsibility means I have to spend every single minute that I can making sure that I am true to my calculation of how much outreach needs to be done to achieve the sales revenue that comes at the end of it. Like, that's all this stuff. We're useless at everything else. The only thing we're good at is just being absolutely efficient on the execution of sales.
Well, you are very frank. I kind of like that. So here's the last question, and it's a pretty big one. These founders have to expect something. Are they going to expect a demo day and be funded? Are they going to expect to learn how to become a unicorn? Where is the thing that they would want most?
So I'll tell you what we tell every founder. A demo day is not a right. A demo day is a privilege. And if they're not growing fast enough, why the hell would I show other investors a company that they can lose money on too? Like, I don't understand that logic. I don't understand, like, everybody doesn't get a medal. It's not like a participation prize that I'm done with all this stuff. Founding a startup, like, I truly believe, I love the US. I love what was built here at the beginning with founders. I feel that we're facing an absolute calamity right now because we have so many people who are not fit for purpose. And I really want to make sure that, like, as a founder, all of us, me as a VC founder, other founders for what we do, that we take the responsibility for the people who work with us, for like the families around us, and say, okay, game on. We're going to play. Let's play. And by the way, if I get to the end of this race today and I haven't grown my revenue and I'm not showing that my customer really likes me, why would somebody put me on a demo day with someone else? So we put fastest growing founders on our demo days. We put like companies that we like the most on our demo days. We put companies that are doing incredible things in our demo days, but we're not putting any losers on our demo days. If we've invested in them and we happen to be losers as well, God bless us. We are where we are, but I'm not going to compound that by bringing other people into the fray as well.
So let me ask you a final, if you can give an entrepreneur a guideline of the top 3 or 4 things before they approach Expert Dojo, and tell us how to tell them how to find you. What would be those 3 or 4 things that you would tell that entrepreneur?
Just love your customer. Like, it's all about the customer. We got lost. All of us got lost. Like, us raising money, other people doing other stuff. But like, we just got lost. And we somehow thought that this was a game of raising money. And the more money we raised, the better it's going to be. Like, I just got offered an opportunity that raised $40 million last year, has nothing left, and their new valuation is $3.6 million. Like, that's what happens when you only focus on raising money. And we haven't seen anything. We're just not even touching the tip of the iceberg for how many companies are going to fail. And these are great founders, great potential products where the focus was in the wrong place. Don't focus 70% of your time going after investors. I don't mind if you find us or if we find you. What I mind is that we have more great companies that are breaking through. Focus on your customer. Don't build minimum viable product. Build lovable product. That means that you're showing the customer the respect of building a feature which is absolutely beautiful, it is complete, and it works absolutely in a transformative way. It is not something which is some junk that you're putting out and you're giving them just because they happen to be the people who are going to pay you the least amount that you're going to get it for. And then love and obsess on that customer, and then become really good at dropping information about how well you're doing. That's all you have to do. As investors, we need you founders much more than you need us, because if we don't show wins, then we don't have many plan Bs. So all you have to do is show you're winning. That's it.
What? That is phenomenal advice. I really appreciate it. I'll drop in the introduction, how to find you. because I'm sure people will want to know where Expert Dojo is. I certainly appreciate all the years I've known you and the deals that you've sent our way. I mean, we've invested in a few, and I would love to see even more. The one thing that I think our audience should realize is that you invest not only in the United States, you invest in Africa, you invest in India, you invest in Asia, you invest all over. So you literally are trying to find those phenomenal deals regardless of where they are. And I commend you and your operation, for that, and look forward to seeing you. And with that, this is a wrap. I hope everybody appreciates the sage advice from Brian, the questions that Dave raised and the answers, and we'll see you next time.